Hi, dear people of the free world. We are Ukraine, Creative English. My name is Henry Keane. My dear colleague Yulia is with me tonight. We are going to do what Yulia called a dissection of our mental health by dissecting Russian-made comments for you. Right, Yulia?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not only Russian-made. Sometimes they're just from lost people that really have lived in a cave for a while and have a quite hard time understanding what's happening in the world. But yeah, mostly I think it's a dissection of my mental health because you were reading it and you've also seen it before, so you've had time to process.
Right. That I
I'm
was
being
just
hit
sure
with
to
it
do.
like a wrecking ball.
Okay.
So
Let's do the thing.
hit me.
All right, let's go. The first one, which is Melva Consultancy, probably a man or a woman, who's running a consultancy company. I'm reading the comment, right. NATO comprised 28 countries. Over 100 countries support Russian Federation, but it doesn't matter. Don't mislead the international community, full stop. So where you're like misleading an international community that just doesn't know a simple arithmetic thing. But what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I see what he's trying to, he or she, whoever this is, I see what they're trying to say. Like, I'm trying a new approach. I'm going to try and level with these people and try to understand them, right? And where they're coming from.
Sure.
Okay, so many countries support Russia. There is Armenia that did support Russia because it was crazily dependent on Russia to fight against Azerbaijan in a war that has been going on for like centuries, right? Russia betrayed Armenia and kind of used it as a pawn. Armenia no longer supports Russia. Kazakhstan is making a lot of money off of Russia and off of sanctions on Russia. So technically they support Russia on a government level in terms of like, keeping their GDP running. But if that were to stop, they would be bye-bye Russia. What other countries support Russia? Serbia, which is dependent on Russia. There is also Hungary with Viktor Orban, who's a fascist and has been in power for a very long time. And the reason why he's in power is pretty much Putin and his games. There is also Fico, which is a party of literally Russian doing in Slovakia, like as in it's a party comprised of like Russian shills. Then we also have AfD in Germany, which is a party that is a Russian project, but Germany itself does not support Russia. So let's put it this way. So countries that are self-sufficient do not support Russia. Countries that can actually make a dent in Russia and can stand back
Sure.
to Russia don't support Russia. Countries that are less fortunate and have a lot of issues with poverty and a lot of issues with economy and a lot of issues with dictators, those support Russia. So North Korea supports Russia. Great example. A dictatorship. The Taliban supports Russia. Even though, it took
Great
them a while because at the beginning, however, at the beginning, it took them a while because even the Taliban was saying that they're not okay with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even the Taliban. I don't know how Russia got the Taliban. Well, I do. I mean, weapons and like shady deals, but but yeah, even the Taliban didn't support Russia. Then we have China, which is also self-explanatory. No matter how many of you went on Douyin, which is Chinese TikTok, and decided they live in this fantastic democracy, they don't. Point is,
But why, Yulia? They are living in a fantastic democracy. Only dare to disagree with that, and you will find out where you actually are living. I mean, it's easy to be in Europe and to say that 100 of countries. Yeah, pardon me, but
and
yeah.
it's easy to go on a tangent here. I know. I could say so much about all of that. I have so many opinions. But point is that the only countries that support Russia are countries that are financially dependent on Russia and countries that are absolutely batshit crazy scared of Russia. The countries that can actually put up a fight against Russia don't support Russia. So countries functioning economically, countries that are democracies, none of them support Russia. And, I had a Serbian person in my comments on Instagram today or yesterday, I actually showed it to Henry before we were recording,
that's
say that,
hilarious.
Serbia doesn't support Putin's Russia. They support the imperial Russia and Russian imperialism. So you know what? Take that as you will, and try to really enter the mind of the people that support Russia.
What does it mean, imperial Russia? Like how
Oh, they like the.
On that back time, or back in the future, or back where do we go?
Well, I
Like
mean,
400 years back
I
then?
think they like the idea of the Russian monarchy ruling the world.
The monarchy, right?
But yes,
Okay.
but but I doubt that they would be okay with the outdoors toilets, the dysentery, the spread of a lot of disease, really bad healthcare that was like not there at all, and I think they would definitely not be okay with the fact that Imperial Russia quite literally owned slaves, as in, but not from Africa. They didn't do the same horrendous thing as the US did, because why travel far if you can just enslave people from Ukraine, Belarus, and everywhere else? So, yeah, if you support Imperial Russia, I would like to know, do you think you're going to be Kripak, which is a slave in Imperial Russia, or do you think you're going to be from the novelty? Because I have an answer for you, and you're not going to like it.
Well, let's also not forget that Russia is very good at turning allies into enemies. It's what Russia did to Azerbaijan by deliberately downing the plane and killing a lot of people. So, well, they did their Russian thing like, no, that's not our deed. We don't do that. We didn't do that.
I actually haven't heard any resolutions from that, or like where I haven't seen where it went at the end of the day, because Azerbaijan hasn't really. Like, I was expecting a very harsh response from Turkey
Me too.
because they're
Me too.
an Azerbaijani ally, but it kind of seems to have just been swept under the rug,
Exactly, but
unfortunately.
Azerbaijan thought, yeah, it was a deliberately
Yeah, I mean,
hit
they'll
by
remember
Russian
it.
missile and then stop. And then nothing happened in the media. Maybe something will be happening soon, but maybe not. I don't know why. Maybe I think we all know the reason.
Yeah,
I think Russia is just
Russia has a grip.
pushing, yeah. But I mean, 100 countries, and we are Yulia, misleading the international community. That's flattering, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
good.
the fact
we're
that
just two of us, and we're just
we have
listen.
so much influence on the
Oh,
international
yeah.
community. Okay, I'm ready for the next one.
Yeah, okay, let's go. So, do you all, right, my God. It's Emily Pohogiano, or Pogiano, whatever. Do you really think, we're talking about the drones that hit oil facilities in Russia. Do you really think this pinpricks of two drones hitting some target hurt us? I mean, that's probably a Russian person is texting us. The Germans had to endure at night the English with 500-600 bomber raids, flattening factories and towns. And the day over, and the Americans with 1,000 bomber raids doing the same on bigger scale to Russia. Whatever. So the question is, do you really think these drones are a war-changing event and like they're constantly presented by you?
So there are actually
By
quite a
us.
few things here that I want to address. One is the English had to endure bombs raining on them and flattening factories and towns. Where have I seen that recently? Слов'янськ, Mariupol, Mariinka, Avdiivka, Andriivka, Severodonetsk, Soledar, Bakhmut. I can keep going. Like, there are so many towns like that, right? Pokrovsk, Первомайське, Selidova. A lot of these towns that have been flattened by Russia. Also, if my memory serves me right, yesterday we had an air raid attack of Shaheds, multiple Shaheds, flying onto Kyiv, where both of us are currently, at about 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. And then another one went up at about 1 a.m. because there were Tu-95 bombers launching from Russia, and those actually sent missiles. So yeah, I do know a thing or two about living under the barrage and rain of missiles, which you, the commenter, don't, because you live in Russia, and we, Ukrainians, only target military facilities because we are not inhumane bastards, unlike our neighbors, you. So there is that. Secondly, no, I don't think two facilities are a big dent. It's a dent nonetheless. And as I said, we're not committing war crimes while we're at it. I mean, like, I'm sure that you think for war, for you to be cool, you need to be a bully, right? And you need to do what you do, which is just flatten towns and stuff. We're not going to do that because, again, we know what rules and laws of warfare are, and we kind of like the Geneva Convention, again, unlike our neighbor, you. But point is, it's not just one oil depot or two oil depots or two drones. There have been drone attacks on Russian oil depots, military facilities, airfields, ships
Every day.
for a while now. I actually, you know what? I'm going to take a second and read something from St. Javelin that came out the other day, which is this super pro-Ukrainian Instagram page that also sells clothing that's like very Ukrainian themed. But they posted something that I think was the perfect analogy to how to explain how Russia is losing and why Russia is losing to people that just don't get it. And the analogy was basically like, I can't find it right now, but you know what? I'm going to summarize it. The analogy was basically like, imagine the US invades Mexico, right? So Mexico, with its tiny army, is holding on for 3 years against the US. The US flagship, like the big ship that the US has, I think it's called
Moscow.
no, the US has like GW Bush or something like that. So imagine that flagship is sunk. That's embarrassing for the fleet of the US. Also, imagine like, the US supplies basically armies of people in several Mexican states to fight against Mexico. So basically to flip and pays them money, and they can't do that efficiently either. And basically for 3 years, the US is fighting against Mexico, and Mexico keeps taking down the US fleet. And the US has much more losses than Mexico does, but of course you can't lose to Mexico, so you continue going no matter what your losses are. So that's the comparison of Russia invading Ukraine. Ukraine took out most of the bases in Crimea. You guys are also building trenches on the beach in Crimea, which, let's face it, is not very ergonomic because, Ukrainian tanks are not going to be coming from the sea. So yeah, those trenches are kind of useless, but you have trenches on the beaches. There is absolutely almost no air defense left in Crimea because Ukraine took most of it out. Ukraine took out a bunch of Russian airplanes that had the ability to do long-range reconnaissance. Ukraine took out a lot of Russian fleet. Ukraine took out a lot of Russian air fleet. Ukraine took out Russian oil ammo storage depot facilities, and military bases, and consistently keeps doing that with drones.
Exactly.
While
Every day.
you keep targeting ice cream shops, schools, and academies. Well done.
Yeah, I mean, you are the Germans that you're referring in this command. You're talking about the Germans, where Germans had to endure at nights. The English also were coming, but you mean the Nazi Germans. So you, dear Russians, are the Nazi Germany this time. You are invading a small country, and you can't invade it for 3 years because you promised to be in Kiev. You promised it to yourself. You wanted to be.
Yeah, it was a 3-day special military operation.
And that special military operation, killing people in Ukraine and murdering civilians every day, is still going on. Everyone is already more or less get used to it, even us in Ukraine. But you are saying that these are pinpricks or whatever, but it is happening every day from a small country, which is no comparison to Russia, right? Russia
Apparently
is so
the
great.
second best army in the world.
Yeah, well,
So
paper
ours,
tiger, isn't it?
100-somethings army in the world is still taking you on.
Well,
Anyways.
yeah, they can say that we are taking them on because we actually, at some point, are giving Russians their own heads, but
Yeah.
with European and American help. So what?
Oh, yes. Russia's fighting NATO and all of that. Many beasts that
Exactly.
are
I
just,
mean, and
not
100
us.
countries are supporting Russia. Why the hell you're not?
Henry, you're
yeah.
so focused on these 100 countries.
Yeah, 100 countries. Yeah, all right.
I think it personally offended you.
I mean, what countries?
Latvia does
What-
not.
Latvia
Latvia does
does
not
not-
support
it's
Russia.
not in the list,
We get
no.
it. We know. We know.
All right,
No
let's-
one thinks Latvia supports Russia, Henry.
No.
He's from Latvia. Just FYI.
Yeah, I know. I am from Latvia. Well, there are people that actually are supporting Russia, and they live in Latvia. So
See, I
so,
knew.
I mean,
knew.
that's crazy.
I knew there is a wound.
Yeah, there is one. There's a big one there. I just,
Okay. Go ahead.
It's not that I'm trying to, come to terms with that. I'm not. I just hate these people. That's it. All right. So, yeah. Well, John Lund.
Uh-huh.
Zelensky ran on a peace platform. His term has expired. He cancelled elections because he probably knew he would not win in a re-election. That's all it is here. That's the end of the phrase.
Oh, okay.
So,
I see what he's saying.
yeah, go ahead.
So,
Hit it.
Zelensky did not run on a peace platform.
What is
He-
peace? What is peace platform like?
like as in like there's going to be no war. Well, he ran on the ending Russia's invasion platform. As in like, Russia had already invaded Ukraine at that point. It was Donetsk, Luhansk and annexation of Crimea. So there was a war already going on. For some reason you, the collective you, a lot of you tend to think that the war started in 2022. It did not. It started in 2014 and it's been going strong since then. Just because you didn't hear about it on the news and the world couldn't give a crap less doesn't mean that it wasn't going on. So Zelensky ran on the platform of ending the war, which means Russians would be GTFOing of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea, or at least Zelensky would be trying to bring soldiers home and not have this raging war going on in the east of our country. However, it's not just dependent on Zelensky, is it? Because what do you mean? So, okay, Zelensky runs on this platform of hey, I'm going to try and end this war that, unjustly came to our country where Russia just invaded parts of it and annexed it. And then Russia invades us and he's like, yeah, well, I promised there was going to be no war. So you guys, we're just surrendering to Russia. That's not how it works. He didn't run on a platform of when you take these logical fallacies and you try to present them as evidence, yes, they work for a lot of people because a lot of people don't engage logic, unfortunately, when they look at things or critical thinking. And I don't mean that insultingly. I mean that it's just you take things at face value, right? Sure, at face value, he ran on the platform of ending the war. But that was the war then. That was before Russia went in and actually attacked the entirety of Ukraine, not just the east of our country. So we don't necessarily have a choice because we have a choice between protecting ourselves and fighting back or surrendering to Russia and ceasing to exist as a nation, which you can't understand because for some reason you can't comprehend that Ukrainians are a separate nation because you have all of these excuses oh, your language is Russian, whatever. Even if it didn't exist 30 years ago, let's say you are correct and Ukraine just started being its own country, made up its own language and made up its own culture and traditions 30 years ago, right? It exists today. And for 30 years, there is a large generation of people, most of this country, because we have a lot more youth than old people, right, grew up knowing themselves as Ukrainians, speaking Ukrainian, and identifying with Ukrainian culture. So whether you believe in its existence or not, there are millions and millions of people that identify as this. And for Russian plans to work, they need to eradicate these millions of people, forbid them from speaking the language that they want to speak, identifying as who they want to identify, and basically just force them into into submission.
Oblivion.
And no, submission. Because it's I personally identify as a Ukrainian. I've spoken Ukrainian since the day I was born. Well, since the day I could speak, basically. Right? So for me, I would have to purposely surrender myself and all of my values and all of my culture and all of my ideas and start speaking Russian and somehow adhering to this culture that will actually never accept me because they see me as less than.
Well, that's
that
what
is
they
the
want.
same, yeah, but that's the point. That is the same idea as Germans had of Jews.
Absolutely.
So, when you say these things and you say that, oh, Zelensky running a peace platform, his term has expired. Yes, it did, but we are under martial law, which means that elections are illegal under our constitution. So he's going to be president whether you like it or not. And we are okay with it because it's martial law. And having an election during martial law makes no sense. Moreover, it's not about having an election for us. It's about Russia GTFOing of our country and letting us live, letting us breathe, and letting us be who we want to be, who we have been. And it's just it doesn't, at that point, it doesn't matter what historical or whatever arguments you bring in that are not even real, but let's say they were. There is a whole nation of people, millions and millions of people, who do not want to be submitted to someone else who's dictating to them who they can or cannot be.
it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, if someone invades your homes and they say, I have a reason for that. I
No,
have a
but
reason to kill you. I have a reason to rape you,
But I
women,
think it's
and
even
abduct
easier.
your children.
But I think it's
just,
even easier than that. Like, let's say the person who made this comment is a man, right? And they lived their whole life as a man, and then and they know their parents,
John
and their
London.
parents are like, let's say John and Jane, right?
Right.
And then these people come in, and they're like, I don't know, Matthew and Miranda, and they're like, we are your parents now, and you're actually a woman. From today on, you need to act, dress, and do things like a woman. And he's like, but I'm a man.
Yeah,
And they're
well,
like, no, you're not. You're a woman. That's it.
That's
So
a
how
decree.
would you act? You know, like you can fight against it or you can submit to it. Are you just going to submit to it without a fight? Because we're not going to.
well, already for 3 years.
Sorry,
in a row.
I'm like, you know,
Well, yeah, that's well. People are expecting exactly that. I mean, you're
Wound up here.
outraged. You know, this is absolutely.
wound up here.
Yeah.
I'm like ready to, you know,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean,
you know, like the Mario, like those, not even Mario, but like old video games where like it starts with like 3, 2, 1, and there's like a player and he's like ready to go. He's just warming up. This is me.
do you remember Karate game, Karate Boy, like Karateka?
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're gonna do that later. But another comment. Well, actually, this video caused a stir amongst the bots. Here's a combo of her comments in a row. I'm going to read. Let's start with the first one. Zelensky lost probably, from 2022 to 2025, February, he lost 1 to 2 million soldiers. I mean, why not billion? 2 million soldiers? Do you even, I mean,
Our army is not 2 million soldiers. Like our army is a little less
in
than a
general,
million.
all of it, all Ukrainian army
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
2 million soldiers.
Yeah.
Far from that.
Yeah.
So,
Also, I don't think our cemeteries.
So what
would
is it? Is it still not even the question? This will looks like a spit, you know, and one is just Zelensky lost 2 million soldiers.
Well, but that's
So
because
what?
recently Trump has been like spewing a lot of like weird sort of stuff, just basically making up numbers out of nowhere. And Zelensky was asked about this in a Pierce Morgan interview he did
Right,
recently.
about that figure.
That that I
Right.
actually dissected on I didn't dissect the interview, but I kind of like compared it to the Tucker Carlson interview because they seem to be aimed at each other. But so that's on the Gaze channel and that's in my news brief section. But I did that and Zelensky actually responded and he said that to date, which was a week ago, we lost 45,100 soldiers as in deceased. Unfortunately, which is obviously not an easy number. It's not like I'm discounting it and being like, oh, it's only 45,000. Like, no, 45,100 sons and daughters is a lot of people to lose to, you know, to a freaking shitty power that just came and decided to put them into the battle for their lives. And they're dignified enough and brave enough to go and fight it. But it's 45,100 people. And then the amount of casualties, which is not losses. Losses and casualties are two different things. Getting a bullet wound in your shoulder is a casualty.
It's a casualty, right?
But that means that you're going to go to the hospital, the bullet is going to be extracted, you're going to be patched up, and most likely you can come back to service, right? So 390,000 casualties, which means if you received a bullet wound in your shoulder, you went to the hospital, 1 casualty. You, that same person, then receives a bullet wound in your thigh, go
Which
to the
happens
hospital,
all the time,
second
right.
casualty, yeah. Let's say you got a shrapnel wound, 3rd casualty. So all of this is not counted as one person. It's counted as casualties. So 390,000 casualties is likely 1/3 of that in people. Because some people get really serious wounds, obviously, like amputations or things that really
Concussions,
put them out of commission for a long time
Right.
or forever, unfortunately. But then some people receive superficial wounds. I mean, a bullet wound is not a superficial wound, but for military, it is, right? As far as combat in
All right, well,
trench
let's-
warfare goes, it's something that can be patched
I
up.
didn't know anything about
Like,
it. But
for instance, I will actually. This is a bit of a personal information, but relevant to here, right? I used to date a frontline soldier, and he was in the hospital 4 times in a year, and all of these were things that he recovered from and went back to fight. So that's 4 casualties out of the 390,000, and there are many soldiers like him that have repeatedly received wounds and came back.
Yeah, well, this comment, what actually is a very interesting part of it, that it says that Zelensky lost 2
Yeah.
million soldiers. And like Ukraine is okay with that, right? That's what you are saying. That Zelensky sends waves of Ukrainians to die,
Well,
and
because
people are looking at it and saying, that's all right.
because it implies that it's Zelensky's war, right? But the
Right,
point is that,
sure.
like, here's the thing. I often hear people bring up that, like, oh, men don't want to mobilize, men don't want to fight and all of this stuff. Yes, there are a lot of men that are scared who don't want to fight. Would you not be scared? Like, you see what this war is like. It's Russians executing POWs, it's Russians castrating POWs. The conditions for Ukrainian POWs, like, they come back anorexic and with like diseases they've never heard of before because Russians torture them every day for like years of captivity, right? And it's incredibly hard to exchange them back. It's scary. But when a person says, I don't want to fight, it doesn't mean they want Ukraine to surrender to Russia. It doesn't mean they want the war to stop in terms of like, we just sign a peace deal and Russia reinvades. That's not what it means. That just means a human factor of not wanting to go and potentially die because it's scary. It is scary, no matter how
hell.
brave you are, no matter what type of a man you are. It's freaking scary. And some people handle it better, and some people handle it worse. Some people do it because they have to. Some people do it because they want to. Some people, do it despite not wanting to, or not, or it's not that simple, and it's not Zelensky who sends people to die. It's Ukrainians who took up arms in February 2022 to go fight against Russia, the same way as they did in 2014. Because we did not have a very strong military in 2014. We had a little bit of a better military in 2022, but not really. Because there were some presidents like, Yanukovych that made sure that our army would not be fit to fight Russia.
But then
and
came
people,
Putin, and here we go. We have a
Yeah.
strong army.
yeah,
Right?
well, but because
NATO is
people,
growing.
it's the thing. It's like if the people didn't want to fight and there weren't enough people that did want to fight, you wouldn't be able to create an army out of nothing. Because at that point, you don't have an army, right? And you need to look at Ukraine in 2022 as barely having an army in numbers because there weren't enough people. And Ukraine did so much recruiting, and we have very good brigades, and we are doing military tech. And sure, there are problems. There are lots of problems. And why wouldn't there be? It's like we are facing this existential threat in conditions in which obviously no one would be prepared for it. And we have no one to consult as to how to do it the best because no one has been through this. None of our allies. So it's like, yeah, of course, there are a lot of things that are going wrong. There is also a lot of pressure. And like, we're in the middle of war, for fuck's sake.
It's not just a lot of pressure. It's
It's
an enormous
hard.
amount
Yeah.
of pressure that I can't remember any country in
Yeah.
100 years.
Yeah.
Or maybe even never in the, not even never, that's too much
No, not
maybe.
never.
But more than country that
But our
has been,
government-
just invaded
You know-
and so much pressure from economical,
It's also
political,
like-
militarily. It's enormous what's going on.
Well,
it's
it's
a
also like-
storm of it.
Our government has so much to juggle, right? Like there is
Right, yeah.
international relations where we need our allies. There is internal situation. There's people getting exhausted and psychologically 3 years of war. Oh my God, like we might not feel it in our everyday lives. I was just talking to someone about it the other day that like, but we sleep with air raid sirens every night. We wake up multiple times a night because of air raid sirens. We're used to it. So we don't necessarily see or feel it affect our daily
it's there,
lives,
right.
but it does because
Yeah.
it like affects your nervous system, right? So there are lots of people that are very unhappy and people that take everything a little too seriously and a little too hard, understandably, because everyone's freaking exhausted. So you have to navigate this. You have to navigate your foreign partners. You have to navigate people that hate you. You have to navigate countries that hate you. You have to navigate propaganda. You have to navigate political play, military play. You have to navigate internal issues. You also need to somehow make sure that the infrastructure is running. You have to navigate the people that are upset that there are bars open. You have to navigate the people that aren't upset that there are bars open. You have to navigate soldiers with PTSD. It's a flood of things. It's not going to go smoothly because it's just a chaotic freaking situation where everything is going out of hand.
And above all, you just have to survive to navigate
Yeah.
all that.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Right, so the other comment is it's probably about rare earth, about rare minerals that Ukraine is about to make a deal with partners to mine it. So the comment says, don't give Zelensky anything. Get rid of Zelensky. I mean, that's probably the same person who read the previous comment. But, I mean, Ukraine is not asking for a military aid for free. And this is a pretty fair deal, isn't it?
Is there anything else after the?
No, that's it.
That's just that.
I'm telling you, it's more like a spit. I know it's nothing.
mean, I absolutely love that, most of the people calling for Zelensky to be like thrown into the trash and like hung and whatever are people not in Ukraine. Because, like, I don't just walk down the streets of Kyiv and hear people scream that Zelensky needs to be overthrown or, like, whatnot. And also, again, you might not know Ukrainian history very well, but when we are unhappy with our president to the point that we're unhappy, we create a revolution, There was Kuchma, who arguably killed a journalist and wanted to become a dictator by creating a referendum that would give him unhinged power. People protested. He served the end of his term for another month and a half or so, and then he wasn't reelected. And then he was given like a good, quiet goodbye because we could have overthrown him, but chose to just like let him retire. So there was that one. In 2004, there was Orange Revolution, where there was an election that was heavily rigged, and we actually revolted 3 times until the election was very highly monitored and supervised, and the democratically elected candidate that most of the country was voting for ended up winning the election because that's what it was supposed to be, because, they just kept rigging it.
Excuse me.
But yeah, they just kept rigging it. It's okay. And then we had 2014, the Revolution of Dignity, when Yanukovych basically just decided to turn his back on everything that he promised the people, which is European integration, and go and submit to his Lord and Savior, Vladimir Putin, without us knowing, and obviously against our will. So he stopped representing the people. So we went and we revolted, and then he ended up fleeing, which wasn't a coup because, again, for a coup, you have to have a violent military takeover of power, and no one took power over. It was like it was 3 of the former Ukrainian presidents coming together and serving until there was an election held. So yeah, not a coup.
The coup cannot be all national, all nation revolting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like who left?
Exactly.
Was the other part? He probably. And also, just a small question, just a small remark. Have you ever known any revolutions in Russia since like 100 years old?
No, not really. But also, like, that revolution wasn't Russians coming together by themselves and overthrowing the monarchy. It was the Bolsheviks, again, taking Russians into a circle, and then the Bolsheviks with the Russians taking... That was a coup. That was quite literally a coup. Actually, it wasn't a revolution. It was a coup.
Exactly.
But anyways... point is that if we wanted to overthrow Zelensky and if we wanted to be done with it, trust me, we would be.
It would have already happened.
Yeah, Ukrainians are not the bunch that's going to just sit and wait.
If you still didn't notice that for 3 years in a row by now. So now this command is also in French and very, very much...
it's a bonus.
It's a bonus. Just one more thing about these rare minerals. I think it's a fair deal, isn't it, Julia, when you just think that Ukrainian blood is way more costly than any, and way more rare than any rare minerals inside the...
Yeah, I would give all
earth.
Ukraine's rare minerals just for Putin to get out and of Ukraine and for people to stop losing their lives, but not as in like Russia comes and invades territory and displaces people, but as in like I think we're not nearly as concerned about the value of minerals as we are concerned about the value of people and the value of their homes and the value of Russia just not being able to decide that it can take something over and get away with it. Anyways, let's do the...
Yeah, well, that's a dissection of mental health coming up. Ukraine doesn't exist. Ukrainian language is a dialect, and Ukraine is a region of Russia. All the wealth of the Ukrainian region belongs to Russia. Moscow is the capital. This is about rare minerals. No, this
Kyiv is
about
the
rare minerals.
mother of all the Rus cities. That's funny because that's literally from the old Kievan Rus, and also Russia loves using that, and they use that to say that Kyiv is theirs. But Rus and Russia are two different things, and it's funny because it actually says that Kyiv is the mother of all cities. Also, Kyiv was around way before Moscow was. Like there was literacy and universities in Kyiv when Moscow was still a swamp and there was nothing there. So yeah, that's quite an interesting comment. Ukraine does not belong to Russia, but we addressed this earlier in the segment already. It's like even if that were true, and even if that were the reality, for 30 years it functioned as an independent country with people and culture and beliefs and kids being born knowing their identity as Ukrainian. So it doesn't really matter what the fuck you think.
Exactly.
Because we grew up here being Ukrainian with Ukrainian traditions, ancient Ukrainian traditions actually that come like back from pagan times and like, I don't know, like long history, right? We didn't just make it up, but even if we did, this is literally what we grew up on. And whether you think our language is a dialect or whether our culture is real or whether it came from somewhere, who cares? It exists because it is here. I am Ukrainian. I know Ukrainian culture. I grew up with Ukrainian traditions, not Russian. They're different. I grew up practicing Ukrainian Christmas. I grew up caroling with Ukrainian kolyadkas. I grew up looking at vertep. I grew up, having kutya for the Holy Supper. And I grew up with Ukrainian freaking traditions. Whether we made them up, whether someone wrote them up in 1991, it doesn't freaking matter. This is my culture and this is what I identify as. And so does the rest of this country. So it exists because it's here.
Right. Well, the culture is the choice. What you are trying to say, what you are implying here, that we need just to get rid of our culture. Because you're saying so. Because it's Russian.
Yeah, and this culture doesn't harm anyone. It's not like we're, as in our culture aims to take over the world or harm our neighbors. Like, no, we just peacefully existed here and grew our culture and grew our country and made it very great, honestly, and like innovative and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so many great inventions
Russia is
came out of Ukraine. Like, actually, Grammarly came out of Ukraine, which you might want to use to stop sounding so stupid when you write your comments and like they're so grammatically just chaotic. But anyways, Grammarly is a Ukrainian company, and most of you guys probably use it if you work at a corporate office and have to write emails or long essays all the time. In college, you use Grammarly. Yeah, that's from Ukraine because we love our country, and we've been investing into developing our country, and we've been investing into developing small cities and big cities and creating, new things and stuff. Russia has St. Petersburg and Moscow. Also, Russia has so much territory that it doesn't need any more territory. This is just an excuse. And that's,
Well, I mean, recently what came up to my mind, though, when I've seen news that Russian oligarchs want to pay $1 million to a pilot that will down French Mirage, the fighter jet. Right, so whether it happens or not happening, it doesn't matter. What matters is that everything is that. It's just in one little freaking picture.
It's like Russia is the world's gas station, and Russia sells gas and oil. That's what it became an empire on, right? Sort of like, modern empire. And there is an oligarch who wants to pay a pilot $1 million to down a Mirage, while $1 million would probably bring gas and electricity to houses in Vladivostok that freeze every winter. And I mean, genuinely, if you look up pictures from Russia, like Russian climate is really bad. Like it's really cold. I mean, Ukraine isn't, people love to think that Ukraine is this like Siberia-like environment. It isn't. Like today it's pretty cold, okay? It's like -6 Celsius. That's bad.
God, it's nothing for Latvian.
It's like 20-something Fahrenheit. Bad, okay? But point is like not normal. Like that doesn't happen all the time. In Russia, temperatures are like -15 Celsius, sometimes -20 in the winter in like Vladivostok or Novosibirsk or whatever.
-30,
and if you
-40,
if you look at like pictures from there, like they have entire blocks of apartments where like they're just frozen and there's snow inside because these apartments are like falling apart and these buildings are falling apart, and it's not like a one-off. Like no, this is a normal thing.
Well,
$1 million would fix that. It would fix so many lives. No, let's pay that for downing a Mirage.
I mean, it's dollars, Yulia. That's my point. It's dollars. So the oligarchs are making money
Of course.
In
Well,
dollars.
well,
They
they have
don't even
offshores.
understand that it's not rubles. They don't even bother. It's so inside their brain that it's not there's no Russia. There's no ruble. But there is America. There is Europe. Their kids are there.
Yeah.
And these bastards are offering not rubles but American dollars to down a French fucking fighter jet.
Yeah.
It's absurd, but some people in internet still think that this is a legit thing to do.
Yeah.
To earn dollars and pay dollars to down the French Mirage. Well, it's never happening, but I mean, it's pathetic. That's what I wanted to say. And
Like this comment section was. But again, I would like to say that even though we don't have any more comments for today, I know that sometimes I can come off a little patronizing and a little mean. I don't mean that for the actual people that are, this is not aimed at the people that are watching this segment and actually want to learn. This is aimed at the people that are patronizing with these comments and think that they know better than actual people who live here and think that they can, you know, just spit whatever they want out to us and tell us how to live our lives, what to think, and what our history is
Who
like
to
when
be.
they have found out where Ukraine is on the map probably a year ago. Best case scenario. So yeah, this video is for educational purposes. I don't mean to come off rude by any means. I know I'm passionate sometimes. But, you know,
maybe I want to sound like that, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to offend people, you know. So, but Julia, you always are so smooth and tender. Sometimes you feel really...
smooth and tender.
Yeah, well, no, I mean,
That's-
yeah.
I don't think anyone has ever described me that way, but like, I'll take it, you know.
Okay, take it.
Okay,
But
well,
don't take it for
thanks
granted.
you guys.
I mean, Julia, but I mean, I was born and raised in Europe, in life. I came here, and I am outraged. How she is, I can't even imagine. It's her country, her culture, her history, being burnt and raped and invaded every single day. And you guys commenting on a Facebook that is not Russian, and you are driving German cars and American cars and using European technologies all over the world, sitting in Europe and telling her how she should be reacting to Russia invading her country right now. So I think she has right to be outraged a bit, and me helping her. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you so very much, and see you soon.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow this channel, you know, or subscribe to it.
Right.
Also, turn on your notifications to see our pretty faces again when the next one of these comes out, you know, because it's a weekly torture chamber for me. Thanks, producers. And then, of course, also like this video or love this video. I don't know, give it a heart. Send it to a friend or your crazy MAGA grandmother. And, you know, give it a comment and tell us
MAGA.
what you think. And I will see you next time, and so will Henry.
So am I. Thank you. Goodbye.